Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small, a podcast about brand development, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the modern world. In this episode, I'm joined by Terry White. Graduate of Harvard, Terry is the founder of WOLACO, an athletic clothing brand based out of New York. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Terry White of WOLACO. Terry, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I want to start out with your childhood and your younger years. Where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
So I'm from Summit, New Jersey, suburb off of New York City. Now living in New York City, and nice to be from close by to the city now living here. But yeah, I was very lucky. Grew up in a comfortable setting. Incredible parents, siblings, three siblings. Was very fortunate to go to a private school in New Jersey for high school. A top kind of athletic, had a top athletic program, and so we'll talk a little bit more about it. But that for me, that was really big. It was kind of who I was as a child and a young adult. It was just always moving, looking for the next sport to play.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to go to good schools, but I always loved athletics. It was almost as though I went to school so that I could play sports.
Gotcha. And specifically, you were mainly lacrosse. Did you do any other sports, or was it lacrosse mainly?
Yeah, lacrosse is where it was the pinnacle for me.
Okay.
I played lacrosse in college, but up until that point, it was anything I get my hands on: lacrosse, hockey, soccer, football, tennis, swimming. Um, yeah, through middle school into early high school, it was hockey, football, lacrosse, and then eventually I decided I was fortunate to be recruited to play lacrosse in college. And lacrosse is one of those sports that happens to be seeded into a lot of the top universities in the country. And I always tell people, if your child is growing up playing a sport, lacrosse is a good one to consider because it can be a decent window into a top university. And I was fortunate to be recruited to Harvard, and
Wow.
I played lacrosse there for 4 years.
Awesome. What was the experience like there?
I loved Harvard for a lot of reasons. I think one was just the worldliness, and the diversity of the student body, the intelligence of the student body,
Yeah.
and it was humbling. There's this kind of Harvard. Um, I don't even know what it is. It's just like a psychological stigma to some degree, where a lot of the students, you almost don't feel like you belong there until the day that you graduate. You're like,
Yeah,
oh,
for
okay,
sure.
maybe I just graduated, and maybe I did belong here. But it was a great experience playing lacrosse there. Had a lot of really intelligent, ambitious teammates, and it was a really great mix between high level athletics and being in an environment that really was rooted in camaraderie,
Mhm.
and then obviously academia. I admittedly I actually struggled a bit early on, and I had to kind of find my way within the curriculum there, and that was an important experience for me.
Absolutely. What did you study at Harvard during this?
So ultimately, I graduated with a degree in sociology.
Okay.
But like I just said, that was actually something that I had to discover.
Yeah.
I think going into it, a lot of people go to Harvard and they either want to be doctors or they want to work in finance. At least that's what people tell you should be doing. So as a
Yeah.
result, Harvard actually makes those two kind of intro courses extremely difficult. And I ended up taking economics as a freshman, and it just absolutely crushed me.
Yeah.
Um, Almost failed the first semester, and being kind of the tough guy that I am, I didn't even have to take it again in the second semester, but it was like a dual semester, like macroeconomics, microeconomics. And I was like, I'm gonna take it again. I'm gonna do a lot better, and I'm gonna balance out my GPA
Hmm.
by, you know, getting an A minus to balance out the D. Uh,
Yeah,
but what I found was it was just hard, and it just wasn't really a course that I was great at, and it ended up kind of crushing me. And coming out of that year, I realized, okay, I think I need to just find something that I really genuinely like.
for sure.
So I started taking art history, and I found sociology. And sociology isn't a course that you take. It's not really a course that's offered at the high school level. So I found it really interesting, the blend between, people, why they make the decisions that they do, uh, and particularly how that merges with the economy and just markets. So I think it was a little bit of a precursor for where I ended up as an entrepreneur.
Gotcha. When did you graduate from Harvard?
2012.
Okay. And then out of this, what kind of previous jobs were you working prior to WOLACO?
Uh, it's a great question. So I mean, high school, working in boat yards, stocking shelves at Quick Checks in New Jersey in the summer, lifeguarding a little bit, but really nothing crazy. Again, fortunate that I didn't have to work. I did work because
Yeah.
wanted the experience in high school, but a lot of my summers were filled with athletics and training, and I was very fixated on my sport and performing at the highest level. So, but when I graduated, I actually took a job in real estate development,
Okay.
because I did have some internships throughout college where I worked in finance in New York City. And for me, where I netted out on that, and I think, Harvard lacrosse is a bit of a pipeline into that industry,
Yeah.
so much so that the blinders kind of go up, and it's tough to realize that there's anything else.
Hmm.
So, it sounds like a good problem to have to some degree, but as a guy that's very, creative and a bit of like an off the beaten path sort of soul, I was a little bit lost. And I had a summer experience where I just wasn't fulfilled. I didn't want to be one of the suits, walk in the streets that just blends in with the sea of suits in New York City. I have this
Yeah.
visual from one of the summers, like 85 degrees in the middle of the summer, walking the street, going out to get lunch, and just seeing the sea of suits and being like, I don't want to be one of the suits.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so, real estate for me was a pretty logical next step, mainly because of the tangible asset class. So I like the idea that we're creating something. You're taking into account people and their behavioral patterns, and I found it interesting. But it was still, when I graduated, it was still a bit corporate and slow moving. And it was in that time, the year to 2 years after I graduated from college and I had that job in real estate, that my entrepreneurial endeavor kicked off. And it's where when I had the idea and when I really started to dig my heels in on it.
Gotcha. And then WOLACO comes around 2013. What sparked the idea to create this brand, the inspiration?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, having been an athlete forever, I think the thing that was most important for me was when I reached the pinnacle. I reached college lacrosse. I was elected the captain of my team my senior year, and I just really loved that group of people. I was so passionate about it. I was passionate about the journey of, waking up early, putting the work in, and at the end of the day, like, you're probably not even going to win that championship that you work so hard to try to
Yeah.
accomplish. So, there's something about that journey. And as I was getting ready to graduate, I kind of had a conversation with myself, and I pretty much just said, if I can't find something that I'm not equally passionate about as I am this group of people and this team and this process, then I'm not doing myself justice. So
Hmm.
automatically, I think a lot of what a lot of people go through when they're reaching the end of their college careers, like, oh, now what? How can I be happy? that was the conversation I had, and that was kind of the standard that I set. So I think that's where the entrepreneurial bug came from, was having that standard set. But I think beyond that, when I moved into the real world and I put athletics behind me, I was now immersed in the real world and, corporate culture, and there were certain toxic things about it. It was very sedentary. And, a lot of my friends were just like, yeah, you kind of hang up the cleats and you get lazy and your health suffers. And like, that's just what happens. But for me, that didn't really sit well. And I became kind of obsessed with this active lifestyle and how important it was for me to achieve my highest potential. And I started finding ways to stay active around my full-time job. I realized it was very difficult to do that. And eventually, I started thinking, there's not really a brand that speaks to this integrated, active way of life. And I think there's a really big opportunity here to speak to people like myself that want a brand that they can look to throughout this journey of living actively. And then kind of serendipitously, I had an idea. I left my apartment to go for a run, and it was pretty soon after Superstorm Sandy. So that's kind of what it makes me remember it. The streets are very quiet, and I realized that I'm running with my phone in my hand. I'm stuffing my apartment keys in my socks, and it was in that moment that I realized that there's got to be a better way to store these things while I'm exercising and while I'm running. And that's when the idea of integrated to the compression short came to mind. And when I had that idea, I knew that this could be the catalyst for something bigger. And in that moment, I became kind of obsessed with building this product. Does anyone else? It's going to hinder me from entering the market. And I just got to work, and I became obsessed with this concept.
For sure. And then your first creation, was it the Northmore Short? And what was that product?
Yeah. So the Northmore Short was a men's athletic compression short with sweat-proof compressive pockets built into it. And that was my solution to that problem I ran into when running. And I launched that on Kickstarter. I'd say like a year after I had the idea. Spent a year prototyping, mailing prototypes back and forth from a manufacturer in Minnesota, and testing it myself and getting it to a point where I felt I was ready to enter the market. And ran a few small pre-sales with my brother, who was helping me at the time. Had some good success, and then we're like, all right, we got to go bigger. So we took it to Kickstarter, and then on Kickstarter, we exceeded our goal by 400%.
Wow!
Raised $120,000 in like 30 days, and that was just the beginning. That was okay. We have something here. Now, how can we turn this into a fully functioning brand and e-commerce business that drives revenue on an ongoing basis, and it's not just a singular campaign?
For sure. At this time, was it only you and your brother helping out?
For the most part, yeah. There was my brother was getting ready actually to go to medical school, so we had this like window of time where he was interning for someone. He actually played lacrosse at Harvard, so he was a year behind me, and he had this kind of year and a half where he was taking his MCATs and prepping for medical school, and he was like, yeah, like I've got time, like let's do this. So he helped me get it off the ground. It was really just us, and I had one buddy who I consider to be kind of an important advisor early on, who really helped me understand this idea of like the lean startup, and this idea that there really aren't boundaries now. Like these days, there's nothing holding you back from getting started. There's nothing holding you back from just pushing forward and collecting information and data from customers and using that to fuel your early momentum and progress. And he was very instrumental in, more than anything, helping guide my mindset through it.
Yeah. At this time, how were you marketing your products?
I use my networks. I always say that, it's easy to get caught up in the sexiness of PR, social media advertising. But, I think one of the things that many entrepreneurs overlook is the embedded network that you've kind of grown up with to some degree. And it's one of the things that I found empowering, actually. I didn't take for granted the fact that I went to an all boys school in New Jersey. It was very athletic, lots of, you know, men that could qualify as great customers that I knew through my time there. And then, the entire alumni base, and then even Harvard lacrosse, but then also the sport of lacrosse in general.
Yeah.
So I tapped into these networks through partnerships and some professional lacrosse players, and then started to embed myself in the kind of New York City fitness scene. And especially 5 years ago, it was really just starting to bubble up, and just put my product on the right people. And eventually we started hosting workouts in New York City, which was a really great way to just put our actions where our mouth was,
Hmm.
and really stand for the lifestyle and add value to customers. And um, that was really the first phase. We weren't spending money really. Um, we were using email and just growing organically.
Gotcha. In 2018, you guys began to launch some new products and expanded towards women. At this point, what were you guys offering? What were some of the new highlight products, especially towards the women? What were you guys offering
Yeah,
products?
yeah. So what we did was, as I mentioned, we started with just compression shorts, and
Hmm.
we've continued to stay extremely focused on that compression offering, because I came to find that it's a bit of an underappreciated product segment in the active apparel category.
Yeah.
So by bringing better quality, functionality, durability to that product category, we were able to differentiate ourselves and become famous for something. So, what I did really up until, pretty much up until 2018, really 2017, was expand on the compression offering, improve the quality, add colors, add different lengths to it. And then we added, basic tops for men, like technical hooded sweatshirts, t-shirts, tanks. And then more recently, we did launch women's apparel, and it's been a good start. But we're actually doing a little bit of an overhaul where we're bringing the design direction back to kind of match what we've done on the men's side a little bit more. So we're pivoting a little bit with the offering,
Hmm.
and really focusing back on this like technical kind of compression concept for women. And I'm doing some things to really streamline our supply chain and become, uh, even a little bit more, sustainably focused. Everything that I built has been designed to last a lot longer than what's currently in the market, especially with large
Hmm.
incumbent brands. So everything we do is has kind of that sustainable mindset in terms of just longer lasting apparel. But we're looking for ways to really streamline our supply chain between men's and women's, and we're doing some exciting things on that right now.
Gotcha. That was actually going to be one of my next questions. You kind of answered it. What are some of the new, or not some of the new, what are some things that separate you from your competitors besides kind of what you mentioned, which you pretty much nailed it on the tee, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a big part of it. I mean, at the top of it all for us, it's about um, being like a more conscious kind of the better the better for you active apparel brand, and building what the future needs to look like in an active
yeah.
apparel brand. And for us, it's really comprised of the way that we connect with our customers, by
Hmm.
being more transparent in the way that we communicate about the lifestyle, but also about the product that we make. So bringing transparency to our marketing, opening up our supply chain to our customers, letting them know where our products are coming from, um, and then on the customer side of it, also building community, leveraging media
Hmm.
to communicate more frequently, and develop a more engaged kind of candor with our customer base. So, but I mean, even further on the product front, we, you know, as I mentioned, product is all designed to last. One of the big problems I had as a collegiate athlete is my compression shorts would just fall apart.
Yeah,
Everything was made by big brands that were pinching pennies, cutting corners. So I wanted to deliver better better quality, longer lasting quality to an entire kind of active apparel offering, and
for sure.
and that's what we've done. And things like 2-year structural warranties are built into all of our apparel, which is kind of unheard of in our space.
Yeah,
Um, and the cool thing is that we don't really rely on fast fashion. So we don't need to be like cranking out new product styles and end up getting like shipped to TJ Maxx in Canada. We're able to build products that can live on our website for a long time. Um, so yeah, just being more conscious, and being a little bit more, or being a lot more engaged with our customer through media channels, and building product that lasts a lot longer.
for sure. Looking at WOLACO today, have you guys moved into retail at all?
So our strategy has been to focus on really focus on our online business.
Yeah,
We have hosted pop-ups. We have an incredible community in New York City, where we host, pre-pandemic, we host
yeah,
New York City's largest free group workout, where we would attract anywhere from 100 to 250 people at 6:30 in the morning on every Wednesday.
wow,
And we would do it outside in Tribeca on a turf field. So we've got this extremely engaged New York City customer, and we have hosted extremely successful pop-ups in the city. We did one in November that was awesome. And our plan post-pandemic is to build a more frequent cadence. And
yeah,
my kind of vision is that I want to be kind of this like centralized distribution, have a centralized distribution hub where our product is, where we own kind of the space and the facility, and we can distribute product for our online store direct to customers, for our e-commerce business. But we can also essentially have our pop-up store outfit within a warehouse. And
yeah,
what we're going to be doing is actually shuttling all of that equipment into a space where we can fill it for a month and activate, and then pull out, and then find another space. In my opinion, that's that's the future. You need to be nimble.
absolutely.
So we've got some plans to roll out a more active, flexible retail plan. I think eventually the goal for us will be to get there. It's just
Yeah,
it's a couple years out, and it's but I really, with the media that we produce and the media that we're going to continue to produce more of, I actually envision a retail space where we are recording podcasts, recording video, on camera stuff, almost like a um,
yeah,
Today Show concept within our storefront in New York City. So that's what we're working towards.
that's awesome. Okay, how many employees roughly do you guys have currently now helping you out?
So there's 6 of us. It's a small team.
Yeah,
But what we do is we actually, we built a bit of a creative stable, we like to call it, the stable of creators here in New York City that help to service the business and provide additional bandwidth. So photographers, videographers, video editors, copywriters that are not part of the core team, but they support the team. So we're still small. We've remained really lean, and I think one of the things that makes us different is that we're a little bit of an insurgent brand, right? We didn't go the straight to VC route,
yeah,
and it's something that we pride ourselves on. and because we're trying to build a really long-standing brand, and retaining ownership and being methodical about it is important, if you really truly are in it for the long haul.
For sure. Looking back at the development, what would you say is the most important factor to take into account when creating a clothing brand?
I think one of the things that's important to take into account is that it is expensive. I mean, I think
Yeah, for sure.
You're not, in order to sell apparel, you're not just manufacturing one consumer product, even just for one singular style. You've got maybe 3 or 4 different colors in 5 different sizes. So you've got this kind of complex program of inventory that you have to manage, and you got to find a way to sell every corner of that grid, from like small in the most kind of obscure colorway that you've ever run,
Mm-hmm.
like double XL. Like, you have to find a way to sell all of these
Yeah, for sure.
these units. So it's a challenging, it's a capitally intensive business, and it's important to understand that when getting into it. And I do think if you're looking to start lean, or if you're looking to just get started, I do think the way that we've done it is a good model, in that we've started really, really focused. Like, even today, I think we have like 15 styles. By the end of next year, we plan to double that. But we're finally in a phase where we're really kind of expanding our product offering. But it took us a second to get there.
Yeah,
Because it's a tricky business.
for sure. Okay, if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring entrepreneur, what would that be? Something that you've learned along your way.
I think passion and purpose are really everything.
Yeah,
Obviously, there's the feasibility of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, and it's important to be aware of whether or not what you're working on is a dead end or not. Because as an entrepreneur, you got to be nimble, you got to be willing to pivot, you got to be willing to move quickly and move past things. Then of course the other end of the spectrum is just persistence and pushing through. But I think there's a difference between being kind of ignorant to whether or not something is feasible, and and being persistent. But
absolutely.
I really think passion and purpose, because those are the things that keep you going. If passion is great, but then if there's a layer of like real purpose and connectivity to you and to what matters to you as a person, you're just setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up with a little bit of a superpower. And if you're raising money, or if you're just being tested along the way, like, that's the thing that's the layer that you can tap into.
Yeah,
And I would just say, like, be really aware of that if you're trying to get started. Like, is that there? If it is, like, great. Like, more the reason to give it a go.
for sure. Well, Terry, thank you so much for joining me today. And for the listeners out there, make sure to check out WOLACO at WOLACO.com.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of Starting Small. If you would, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, follow Starting Small Pod on social platforms to keep up to date on future guests.